My name's Jesse. Welcome back to American Beef Ranch. Today I want to take just a few minutes of your time and talk about the things you need to consider before starting a farm in 2025. Let's get to it. Now, by no means am I the end-all be-all on farming and what it takes to farm. Now, I do farm. My family's farmed for 110 years, and I've also livestock farmed and crop farmed. So I have a little bit of experience, and I hope that I can help share that with you. And today, if you're hoping to learn about livestock, well, you're in the wrong place, and you're gonna have to come back later. But today, if you want to talk about crop farming, you are definitely in the right place. And honestly, the first and most probably important consideration is right over here. So let's get to it. Now, the first thing you've got to have in 2025 if you want to start a farm is obviously land. Look, this may be really easy for you or really hard for you, but you got to have land to farm. So whether you get it from your family really simply, you borrow it from a neighbor, you do whatever, you've got to find land. And if you haven't started looking for it, you need to start looking for it now, because obviously without land, you can't farm. Now, this could be a lot of land, this could be a little bit of land, and usually you can get a hold of it in a couple different ways. You can rent it, you can lease it, or you can buy it. Probably to get started, you should definitely rent or lease the land, and you can look up the average price in your area to lease farm ground, or you could talk to a neighbor or a friend and find out more about renting and leasing ground in your area. Now, if you choose to buy land, I would be very careful. Farmland is very expensive and in very short hand, and so usually it comes with a very high price. And if you are not financially stable and financially 100% financially sound, or can, have a little extra money to afford to do it, jumping in and buying a whole bunch of farm ground probably is not a good idea for you. Either way, you have to have farm ground to farm, so you better find it and you better get on it now. So after you have your farm ground, what would be your next consideration? Equipment. Now, man, this topic can get really difficult and you can get really messy, but I'm going to try to make this as simple as possible. In my mind, there's three kinds of equipment. There's tillage equipment, so working the ground and preparing it for the next thing that you're doing. There is seeding or planting equipment. That's what you actually put the seed in the ground with. And then there's harvesting equipment. Now, depending on what crop you're growing, all that can change. But anyway, those are the three kinds of equipment. And you can go new or used. And I'm going to tell you right now, new equipment is super expensive and you could probably stay away from that. Also, to consider that you can custom hire any of those kinds of equipment to come to your farm and do that. Now, that gets into the next consideration, or a little bit later consideration. But for right now, with equipment, you have new and used. Now, typically, it really depends on what you're trying to do, how many acres you have. 100 horsepower tractor may be plenty big for you. For me, around here in my acreage right now, I need probably about 200, but in consideration, if I lease some more ground next door, I may need even bigger, or another tractor, an additional tractor to help me do more work. Now, this tractor is behind me is a 40-year-old, 45-year-old tractor, and this may be the only option you have if you choose and you want to do it yourself. Now, you can get a lot of used equipment if you really look in your community within your area for probably $50,000, but I would not assume that you should go ahead and get the harvest equipment. I apologize, my microphone died. I filmed a whole bunch of other video clips and now it really ruined my day. But we're gonna finish this video. Like I was saying, harvest equipment, super expensive. I wouldn't get it first. If I was starting out, the way that I would buy equipment, tractor into the tillage equipment, then you go to the seeding equipment, and then finally you get the harvest equipment. And you need to take in consideration that this equipment is not going to pay you back instantly. It's not going to pay you back very fast. It's going to be paid back over years. But also, one of the worst things that you can do is buy a piece of equipment that's already maxed out for what you're doing, and then grow next year and have to go get more equipment or hire more work to do the same job. You are going to spend the money and invest in equipment. You need to make sure that if you're going to grow, that you can use that piece of equipment continually. I mean, you may have to add more later, but still you want to be able to use a piece of equipment for more than just your first season, especially if you grow. Now, that also takes into consideration, if you're going to buy equipment, you got to know how much you want to do. So you got to learn about the next consideration. I need to put a little caveat in here. Guys, this is not an end-all be-all list. This is not everything you need to know. This is just merely 5 things I think you really is the very basics, the things you need to consider before you want to start farming. It goes a lot deeper than this, but I just want to put this out here to help give you a little helpful information that's useful and that you can use, right? That's the goal of this entire video. So back to the video. The next consideration is you've got to figure out your amount of involvement. How much time, how much effort are you going to put into farming? Now, this is my fourth year, full year farming, and I actually, from 2021 to 2023, did all the work. I did everything. I spread the organic fertilizer, I planted the seed, I did all the irrigating. This year, all I did was irrigate. Everybody else custom hired came in here and did other work, and it was really weird for me and I didn't like it, but due to all the considerations we're talking about, this year I just couldn't do it all. I just had to do the irrigating and let everybody else do the other thing. The ground was worked, it was planted, and was harvested by other people that were hired to do custom work. And it's really common for that to happen. Now, if you want to, you can be what I call a co-op farmer. You can call the co-op, they can give you the seed, they can give you the fertilizer, they can give you the custom people to call to do the work, and you can just own the land or rent the land or lease the land and basically get what's left at the end of the year. And there's nothing wrong with that, that's fine. Or you can be really involved. You can learn about, in my area, you can learn about the irrigation systems, water rights, you can learn about soil health principles, you can learn about fertility, what certain crops like, what other crops don't like, the kind of crops that grow in your area best, what to do to get those crops to grow as best as possible, where do I sell my crops, who has the best seed, what about fertilizer, what about biologicals, what about sprays and chemicals and all this other stuff. You can learn about all of that stuff if you want to, but it's really up to you, and you've got to figure out yourself how much time you want to spend on this operation. And once you know how involved you want to be, well, then you got to figure out what you're going to plant. I've been really struggling with how to say that. Figuring out what to plant is really difficult. And I've struggled with this myself. Like, I have always struggled with what to plant, what do I grow, because I'm a small farm, I'm a starting out farm, and I really need to have the best profitability possible. But through all of that, what I've learned is that typically there is some very, common crops or crop types in the United States, right? So we have small grains like our wheat and our barley. We have bigger grains like soybean and corn. And then we have, various other crops, whether it's forage crops, row crops, or other high value crops. Now, I'm just specifically talking about crops, not nearly specialty crops or vegetables or anything like that. I'm more talking crops that are grown in rows or forages. Now, I think the best advice I can give you is just plant the most common crop that's in your area. Literally look at what your neighbors are doing and do the exact same thing, because especially if you're custom hiring in people to help you do work, those people probably aren't going to have the specialty equipment either. You may get a contract for a specialty crop, but usually you're going to find people that have the equipment to plant and harvest the most common crops in that area. And it's probably the best to go with that because it is less stress and it's less, specialty stuff that you have to find when you're getting started. It's really important in farming, especially when you're getting started, to probably keep it simpler instead of more complicated, because it's only going to add stress to your life, and you don't need that in your first year of farming. But one thing that you definitely should spend some time on and be on top of is the money. Honestly, probably one of the most overlooked things in farming is either the bookwork or the finances. Taking time to learn and figure out what things costs, inputs, because you've got to consider, right? You have seed, you have fertilizer, you have rent or lease costs, you may have taxes, you have fuel, you have custom hire work, and the list goes on and on. And where you're at, if you're working with a bank or you're working with some financial institution, they probably have a system or a balance sheet system that they want you to use. If not, you can go online and get templates and just kind of look through the list of all the things. But you can look up farming balance sheets. A lot of universities have those different kinds of things. But probably what you should do is make a mock balance sheet and then find somebody to look it over and tell you if you're crazy or not. Obviously, you can get the prices of the local area, you can get of the seed, you can figure that cost, you can figure the fertilizer, you can estimate some of the costs, you know about what the crop is worth most likely in your area. You can put that all into a mock profit and loss statement, and you could hand that over to somebody who is more knowledgeable than you, and they can kind of critique it for you, and you can learn from that. But definitely take some time probably half of the time that you have spent farming should be learning the numbers, digging into the finances. And look, once you get to the point where you learn it, definitely hire somebody to do it for you. But you definitely should know all those numbers and how they work so that you can understand it. Because if you don't understand your books or your finances, it can really come back to bite you in the end. And honestly, it can cost you your farm, or it can cost you just a lot of money. There you have it, guys. Those are the things that I can think of. You got to have land. You got to have equipment to do it. You got to figure out how much you want to be involved in the operation. You got to decide what you're going to plant, and you got to know the numbers. You got to have the money straight, because if you don't have the money straight, it makes everything so much more difficult. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. And one more tip here for you. If you are really considering doing this, you really wanting to get into farming, honestly, probably above everything else that I tell you, the most important thing you can probably do is find a mentor or go to work for somebody that's farming. You need to learn from them. They've made mistakes. They've spent thousands of dollars. They've lost thousands of dollars. They know what things are really positive to do for them and what things do not work. And you can glean so much information from those people that it will save you headaches and money, and it'll save you time and effort and make sure you're on the right path to be successful in farming. And I tell you what, most farmers are really genuine, really awesome people, and they just want to see people succeed, and they would love to help you or anybody else succeed at farming if they wanted to do so. So remember, be a good person, do the best you can. God bless. My name's Jesse, and this is American Beef Ranch. Get out there and farm.